Hello there. Thank you for joining us today for this Food Co-op Initiative webinar, Loans 101, a deep dive. We're excited to do this today. We've got a very special guest. We're going to get through a little housekeeping first, and then we'll dive into this exciting topic. So just a little bit about Food Co-op Initiative ourselves. We have helped over 79 food co-ops open all over the nation over the last 10 years, and we're currently providing support and resources for over 140 communities all across the nation, from Sitka, Alaska, over to Boston, Massachusetts. We exist to support startup food co-ops at all stages of development, and you can call us at any time or email us. The number and the email are right there on your screen. You can sign up for our mailing list. You can take a look at our extensive resources at our website, foodcoopinitiative.coop, and all of our support and resources are free. So please look through those webinars. We have free documents, books, workbooks, as well as you can call or email us for conversations and more information anytime. We want to take a quick minute to thank our sponsors who make it possible for us to do this work for over 100 communities all over the country. And that would be the USDA, the National Cooperative Bank, National Cooperative Grocers, the Cooperative Foundation, Co-op Fund of New England, and dozens of mature food co-ops and individuals who love food co-ops all over the United States. Thank you. You guys make this possible. A few quick points. We are recording this webinar today, and it will be available shortly actually on our website and on our YouTube page. So if you learned some great stuff here today, please take an opportunity to find it on our YouTube page or our website and share it around with your board members and involved co-op owners. We want your questions. This is actually live, and it works best if we get questions from you that we can add to the conversation. We have some materials we're going to go through for the first half, and then we'll be taking those questions you can send them anytime during the webinar at info@fci.coop. Just email them to info@fci.coop. I'm collecting those questions as our presenter is going to be presenting, and then at the end of her presentation, we're going to take those questions, as many as we can fit in. Okay. So without much more ado, we're going to jump into Owner Loans 101, a deep dive. And we're particularly excited to share this one today because we actually did a webinar just 2 months ago with Katie. Katie Novak is going to be our presenter today. And it was about the really amazing success story of Green Top Grocery in Bloomington, Illinois, and their story of raising $1.3 million in owner loans to open up their startup. And just to give a little perspective before we get started, this is not a particularly rich community. Population isn't, huge. It's, a little over 100,000. It's just that they did a phenomenal job of engaging their community and getting them excited about participating economically in their co-op. So that was just great to hear Katie's story. People loved it, but they were so interested and they wanted to know so much more about the details about how to run such a successful campaign that we asked Katie to come back and do 101 and 201. 2 deep dives on the nitty-gritty details of how to run a owner loan campaign for a startup food co-op. So we are very excited to have Katie here today. I'm going to be asking her a few questions and doing a little at the end, sharing your questions with her. But this is going to be Katie's show. She's going to tell you all about what she did to create success for Green Top Grocery. So welcome, Katie.
And kind of set the stage a little bit on what we're going to do today and how this is going to run. We've got some great information that we want to share with you. We're going to get some things in place, kind of setting the stage, and then talk through some tools that would be helpful when you're running your campaign, and then more specifically about building your team. And then some other things that you might want to be thinking about as as you go through the process of planning your own loan campaign. And then we'll take some Q&A at the end. So let's get started.
All right.
So, sorry, go ahead, Declan.
Oh no, go for it.
So the setting the stage part I wanted to talk to you about today is really taking advantage of the resources that you have available to you. So we have the Food Co-op Initiative. Jacqueline and the folks there do such great work, and they are such a great resource. And the Capital Campaign Toolkit is really an excellent way to start, and it really should be your Bible, so to speak, moving forward. If you're going to start your campaign, that's really where you have to start. All the groundwork is there. And then also keeping in mind Principle 6, co-ops helping co-ops, co-ops cooperating. Rely on your peers. Talk to people who have done this. Ask them to share their materials. Talk through the process with them. We have such a resource in this cooperative movement that we really need to take advantage of. So be sure that you're reaching out and gathering as much information as you can from the folks who've done this before. We don't have to recreate the wheel. We've done this now. We know what we're doing, and we're happy to share about it. So let's talk about the tools that you need in place. So there are quite a few tools that you want to be working on in the planning stages. First and foremost are your legal documents. This is going to take the most time, not because it's hard or complicated, but because lawyers don't always operate on the same time frame that we're operating on. So be sure to start working on your legal documents early, very early in the process. Get yourself a specific attorney who specializes in co-op law. That will help you tremendously. It's also, and this is hard to gauge, but when you're establishing your relationship with your attorney, you kind of want to gauge with them, what's their turnaround time? How much time can they devote to the project? Talk through those things so that you're not waiting on something you need for months or weeks longer than you had anticipated. And make sure that you're both on the same page when you choose the attorney that you're going to work with. As I said, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take longer than you think. So make sure that you're starting that early. The legal documents that you need to have in place are the promissory note and the subscription agreement. Those are the legal documents that owners are going to sign to make their notes. The disclosure statement is like a prospectus when you're making an investment, and the lawyer's going to have to go through that, and it's a detailed document. So you have to have that ready for the lawyer to go through. The promissory note and the subscription agreement are going to come more from the lawyer to you, where the disclosure statement is going to come from you to the lawyer. So you have to be prepared for that kind of back and forth as well. And then when you have those documents, you have to send something with them. So you're going to want to craft your introduction letter, and likely your attorney is going to want to review that too, because we have legal requirements and restrictions about how we can talk about this, and every state is different. So make sure that you're talking with your lawyer about what you can and cannot talk about. And then your business plan. We did print our business plan and include that with our legal documents. In hindsight, it's a lot of paper, and I'm not sure it gets a lot of attention. I think probably I would send a link I would make sure they get it. They need access to it. But I think a link is probably a more economical and environmentally friendly way to do that. So that's what you need to be thinking about in terms of your legal documents. You also need to be thinking about very early on your data and how you're going to track this, and how you're going to keep track of who made what loan at what percentage amount and what payback time frame, and how that will work collaboratively. So are there going to be more than one person at a time accessing that information? And if so, how does that work? And does it work? And does it provide you the flexibility that you need? So it is a lot of data. And it doesn't seem like, oh, you might have 700 owners. So you've got like 700 names and 700 addresses. But you got 700 names, 700 addresses, 700 phone numbers, 700 emails, 700 spouses, 700, everything. So when you multiply that out, you're talking 20-some thousand cells of data. And you need to be able to use it flexibly and sort it the way you need to. And so I want you to think really specifically about your database and how you want to sort this data and how you want it to work, and to get someone who knows how to build one. We were so lucky that we had a board member who could use Excel inside and out and knew how to formulate, spreadsheets to connect to each other and all this great stuff. So it's important that you start working on that now. It's going to take some time and some practice. We did not practice with ours enough. So please practice. Pretend, pick 10 names out of a hat and pretend they all make a loan and you all enter the data at the same time and see what happens, and then delete it, of course, because they didn't make a loan. But Google ended up being the best option for us. Google Docs was a good option, and it allowed us to work collaboratively. We tried Dropbox. We tried another app or another feature that I can't remember what it was called. But anyways, Google ended up being the best. And you got to test it 100 million times if you have to.
That's something that occurs to me as you're talking about getting those legal documents together, Katie. I know when we've talked, you told me I was pretty amazed by how long that process took. When you say make sure you prepare and give a lot of time for that, what do you really think that looks like? How far in advance should they start that relationship with that lawyer to get the documents in time to start their campaign when they hope?
I'd say as early as you can. 8 weeks at a minimum, I would say, would be best. Ours took like 7 months, 6 months to get finalized. Now, that being said, our attorney had some personal issues that he was dealing with, but it was down to the wire. It was like, hey, the campaign is starting next week, and we got to print these and mail them before then, and we didn't have them back. So I say a minimum of 8 weeks. If you can do 4 months, I think that'd probably be best.
Okay. I just wanted to get that sense of proportion out there, because I think a lot of groups are like, and then we'll start the paperwork and we'll start the campaign next month. And I'm like, well,
yeah, no,
not so much.
Don't do that.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so the next thing you need to be thinking about, next set of tools you need are your marketing materials. So you're going to have some supporting documents that talk about the campaign. And I think of them, we thought of them at least in 2 bunches. We did an initial mailing to all of our owners, and that included what I call the marketing materials. So these are the pretty things, the fluffy things, the colorful things. And then we did a second mailing to people who were interested in making a loan or who did make a loan that were the legal documents. So these were black and white, factual legal things. They were pretty and they looked nice, but they weren't fluffy and fun like the marketing materials. So in the marketing materials, you're going to want a brochure. You're going to want to explain what the campaign is, where the money's coming from, not just your owner loans, but where else, what other funds or sources of funds do you have available, and how do you plan to use them? You want to tell the story of your co-op very briefly. You don't want to write a 5-page paper on this, but a page-long history of your co-op. And our history included some visuals, which I think is great. If you can make it easy to read and easy to look at, that's even better. And then a summary of your feasibility study. And again, that was a 1-page. And we all know our feasibility studies are, not 1 page long. They're very long documents. So concise and specific information about your feasibility study and how that translates to your location in your campaign. 1 page at the most, I would say. And all of that goes to every owner. So every owner knows, and that also includes an introduction letter from our board president. Like, hey, this is the campaign, this is what we're doing. We want you to participate. You're going to be hearing from our call team. So that's included in the marketing materials. Then once you start making phone calls and you start hearing from owners, they're going to want more information. And this is where the legal packet comes in. So they're either going to say, yes, I want to make a loan, or, that's interesting, I want more information. And so this is where the legal packet comes in. So we used a very nice presentation folder. Think of a school folder with 2 pockets. And we put a green top sticker on the front of the folder that said Owner Loan Campaign. And we included all of the documents that they would need to make a decision and make a loan. So in that legal packet was our business plan, a copy of our lease, actually a copy of our letter of intent to sign a lease. We didn't have a lease at the time of the Owner Loan Campaign, but we had the letter of intent, the subscription agreement, the promissory note, and then an instruction letter on what to do with all of this information, because it's overwhelming. If you open this packet, it's like, whoa, there's a lot here. So step-by-step letter. This is, the letter says, thank you for making a loan or considering a loan. There were 2 boxes the caller could check before they sent that packet out. And here's what you do. Here's what the business plan does. You know, this is for you to read and become comfortable. This is for you to sign. This is where you sign. This is what you put in this field. So a very detailed letter on what to do with the packet. And your hope with that letter is that people can figure out how to fill out the paperwork and just send it back to you. That's best case scenario. It's likely lots of people won't do that. It's a lot of paper and it's kind of cumbersome, but the instruction letter at least gives them the option to do that. And it does alleviate some work from the campaign team for those folks that just fill out the paperwork correctly and send you a check. That's better.
Excellent.
So you can set up appointments to work through that.
Your instruction letter is really phenomenal, and I just wanted to point out that Katie's given copies to us of a bunch of these documents, and we're getting them up on our website, and we'll actually post about it on our Facebook page Monday where you can find them, but they're going to be on our website as of Monday, and you can get copies of a lot of these really excellent documents that her and her team crafted that she's mentioning today.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing you're going to want to think about is your communication plan. You need a tool in your toolbox to handle your communication. So what we did was create a communication timeline, and looking back now, it's almost irrelevant now. But at the time, you need it. You need to know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and at least have a plan, because it's going to change 100 times before then. But having a plan at least allows you the flexibility to change the plan, so that you're not just scrambling and like, oh, maybe we should post today, or maybe we should send out an email. You know, there's a structure. So create a timeline and create some templates. So our email update that we sent to owners 3 times a week was a standard template. You know, we had this key image that you're seeing here included in the email, along with key stats. You know, our total collected, percent of goal, number of owners who've made a loan, and some other key stats. And then we usually included some kind of anecdote, some story about an owner, maybe a picture of an owner who'd made a loan. But it was very standard. So we knew we just had to update these images, update these few stats, and press send. It was not complicated or hard, and that's something then a volunteer could do. Once they had the updated stats, you know, they had access to the images, they could upload it and get an email sent out pretty timely. And then also some Facebook templates. We use this key image a lot in Facebook and made it our cover image, and having some standard posts. So, you know, when an owner agrees to have their picture taken, you can type up something real quick and say, hey, Joe Smith just made a loan, and we're so happy to have him involved, and, you know, he made a loan because X, Y, Z. So having some templates in place makes it a lot easier when those things happen to just pop them out. And then volunteers also have content they can use without worrying about, did I say that right, or is that how you wanted this? We've already discussed that. We know how we want it to say, how we want it to be communicated. And then in
one thing
go ahead.
No, one thing I think you guys did particularly well was you just had so many images of owners interacting with the campaign, even if you didn't have a testimonial quote. And I think a lot of startups are afraid to ask owners to kind of step up and be in a photo or say something for them. Did you find people were actually resistant to that when you asked? Or how did people respond? Yeah,
some people are. Some people don't want to, and that's totally okay. I think the way you go about asking the question is important. So usually when these things were happening, we were one-on-one. So I was in front of the person, or a caller was in front of the person, or a closer, and we would say, hey, you've made your loan, you've written your check, thank you so much. There's one more thing that you could do to help us if you're interested.
Okay.
If you'd like to, we can take your picture, we can post it on Facebook, but if you don't want to do that, we're perfectly okay with that. And that's exactly how I would say it. So I think letting them know that this is another way they can help, makes it feel like, oh, okay, this isn't just about me getting credit. This is about the co-op moving forward. And this is going to help, maybe this will help someone else make a loan, or see that more community members are making loans. So I think the way you say it, and saying it in a one-on-one setting was more effective. When we did calls, when we were on the phone with folks, they were more reluctant to say, nah, you don't need to use my name. But in person, people usually were more willing to.
Excellent. Thanks.
So one other thing we did communication-wise, different in phase 2 than we did in phase 1, and that I think this was at Jacqueline's suggestion, actually was a video update, where but included in our newsletter, so the newsletter email update went 3 times a week. In that newsletter was a video. So those stats I talked about earlier, how many loans, where we are to date, percent of goal, we put those into a video. It was just very simple. It was just me sitting in front of the webcam, with pieces of paper that said our total for the day and how many owners and all of that good stuff. 30 seconds to a minute long, and then we posted those on Facebook. So it seemed to get a lot of traction. I think people liked the change in method of communication. They weren't necessarily bombarded by email, although it did come in email. They knew they could see the video on Facebook without having to open the email, and so it got some traction, and I think it's worth considering. And then graphics. We have a great board member who does great graphic design work for us, and having great graphics in place that can translate from stage to stage in your campaign are wonderful. So for example, this key image that you're seeing here, our graphic designer created this filled in at every limit. So we have a key that says we've raised 100,000, and we have a key that says we've raised 700,000, and all the way in between up to 1.3 million. So that when we got to that point, we had the image ready. So I didn't have to go back to her and say, oh, now we're at 1 million. Can you get me a new image? And then, she's got 10 other things to do and clients to take care of, and then I get it in 3 or 4 days, and now we're at 1.2 million. So having those things prepared and ready and ahead of time is critical, and I think helped us a lot.
What a great idea. I could see a use for that in mini campaigns too. Before you get started with any campaign where you're going to be filling something in, have all the versions beforehand. That's awesome.
Yes. Okay, so we used a volunteer sign-up form for our callers, and this was important to have this in place ahead of time. We use Sign Up Genius. There are lots of online tools that you could use. I find Sign Up Genius to be pretty user-friendly and pretty easy to work with. So what we did was just plot out every call shift for the entire campaign and the number of callers we needed in each time slot. And the graphic here isn't all that easy to read, but we had 2 positions to fill each night. So we had callers, and I think this is from phase 2, so we were taking up to 8 callers a night because we had a little more space physically in phase 2. And then we had an admin volunteer. And so every night in phase 2, which we did not do in phase 1, and I'd suggest this, was have an admin volunteer on hand. They made copies, they put packets together. If we had food, they picked up the food and cleaned up the food or got the food out. They did all the support kind of things for us, and that was really helpful. But having your sign-up plan in place is really helpful before you move forward and kick off your campaign. And you need training. Training is critical. This is a picture of Jacqueline and I doing the very first training session we did for the Owner Loan campaign. And we did kind of a 3-phased approach to our training. Everyone got basic level setting training. And that's, what is the campaign? Why do we do this? What's my role as a board member, as a communications member, as a caller, talking through all the job responsibilities so that everyone had a real good understanding of where they fit into the campaign and what they can and can't talk about. That's another key element to the training. And then we had all of the callers take 2 additional training sessions. So we did a little intro session about asking for money, thoughts around money, why we do this campaign in a little more detail. And then the next session of training was actual ground level training. Okay, here we are in the room where we're making the calls. How do I keep track of what I'm doing? How do I know who I'm supposed to call? How do I document what happens? And kind of on the ground, real world, how do we do this training? And that sometimes took more than 1 session. So we did a group training with everyone, but if someone, needed a refresher, or I don't remember how we're tracking this, we did ongoing training. but it's important to create a timeline and know ahead of time, plan out, your campaign starts 3 months from now, kind of backfill, okay, we need people trained by this date, and that means we have to do level saving this date, and have an accountability system in place. So as the chair of our campaign, I kept track of who had what training. And if a board member missed the entry-level level setting training, I was following up with them to say, hey, we got to get this done. Can you attend this makeup session, or can you schedule a time to sit down one-on-one and make sure that you're up to speed? Because it is very important that everyone understands where you are, and that follow-up creates accountability. So they realize, hey, this is important. This isn't just something we can, I can figure out at the next board meeting.
Well, and those layers of training, I mean, you guys did 3 different types of training, which is phenomenal. But one thing I really want to point out about Katie and how successful they were is Katie was really clear with every level of the co-op, from the board of directors to the volunteers, to the people who tabled, that there was no success without them being as invested in the campaign. I mean, not doing as much work as everybody, as invested in the campaign as she and her team was, that everybody was playing the same ball game at once. And I see this as a common struggle for startups. It's kind of like, oh, that's happening over here, and those people are working on that. But you have board members who actually aren't in the loop, don't know how to talk about it, people who are tabling who don't know what to say. If someone comes in and asks about it at the farmer's market, and Katie really made sure that everyone on the team felt invested in, this is the thing we're doing right now. We're going to, and here, yes, we're the key players, but you're all on this team with us, which I think was a huge part of your success.
I agree, and I think that's really important. If I could stress any point, that's probably it, to make sure everyone understands their role and how they can participate in the success, regardless of what role they're playing. Project timeline. So we talked about a communication timeline, and we know we need print materials, but it's kind of important to plot all of this together. So you have all these separate pieces, but it's important that you have a project timeline outlining specifically what needs to get done when and who's responsible. So we created a project timeline and included all parts of the campaign in that. So we had all of the communications deadlines and requirements were included, including all of our print materials, kickoff events, and the meeting schedule, when our team was meeting, when the board was meeting, when training sessions were scheduled, and then our call schedule and board updates. And so it's important that you kind of plot that all out so that everyone has a clear understanding of what they're responsible for and when it needs to be done. And all thought out workflow. So this is a diagram, and I think it's probably hard for you to read, but we can include this. If I didn't include it with the documents I sent Jacqueline, I'll make sure we do. This is a call flow of what we thought would happen before the campaign started when we called someone. So, we call them, they answer, they don't answer, and then what do you do? Or they say yes, and then do you send them a packet, or who sends the packet? So we diagrammed all of that out so that when we got started, we felt pretty comfortable. Okay, I know when someone says maybe, that I know what the next step is. Or when I have to leave a message, I know what to say when I leave a message. And every kind of scenario was walked through. Well, at least every kind of scenario we could think of. Of course, there are 100 we didn't think of. And then you kind of just make do and do the best you can when those pop up. But having a good workflow was really important to us. And I would even go so far as to create workflows based on the projected amount of the loan. And so there are some folks that you think, they could make a decent sized loan. And perhaps a phone call, a cold call to them, asking them to make a loan might not be the best way to get them on board. Maybe it's a call to schedule a meeting. So then that changes your workflow, so you schedule your meeting, and then you have your meeting, and then you make your ask, and all of that kind of thing. So think through all of the possible scenarios that you might encounter, and then try to create a workflow. Limiting, who does what work is important. So does the caller send the packet? Who sends the packet? Making sure everyone understands that. You're also going to need a budget, and there's lots of money to be spent in the capital campaign. It's not cheap to run a campaign like this, but you're going to think about your print materials, your postage, ink for your your local printer, paper, recognition events. If you're going to do a kickoff event, any kind of training or consulting that you're considering, of course, your legal costs. And I would definitely include a celebration party. You need a budget in there. Regardless of what happens at the end of your campaign, you have to celebrate whatever happens. We didn't reach our goal at the end of phase 1, but that didn't stop us from having a party and getting excited about raising $900,000. We still did that, and I think it's important to do that. A tip on this, we created all of our print materials, and I printed them off at the office and took them to the post office to see how much it would cost to send them, just to make sure we were all up and up and had everything we needed. I was really making sure we had the right stamps. Well, so it said it would take a 49-cent stamp. Fantastic. So we print all the materials. I take it to the post office, and the guy says, "Oh, sorry, this is going to cost 79 cents." Is the quality of paper that we had at the office was not the same quality of paper that we printed the materials on. And it changed the weight of the document. It changed the weight of the envelope. And so test it with the real thing, not just what you think the real thing is. So lesson learned on that one. We doubled our printing budget because of that, or our postage budget. But detailed job descriptions are also important. So you're going to have your budget, but you're also got to have outlines and specific job descriptions for every part of your campaign. So callers and closers and people doing admin work, board members, outreach folks, they all understand where they fit and how they are important in the campaign and how they play a role.
And what's interesting to me is I don't think I've ever seen that before. Job descriptions actually about what your role will be in the campaign. Are those documents that you're going to be able to share with us so we can make sure everyone knows they'll be out there?
Yep, those are included.
All right, so those will be on our website by Monday. Again, I'll put up the notification on Monday when those go up, but those will be on our website, all those job descriptions, if you want to take a look at those.
And then building your team. So these are just some funny pictures that we took of our team, but all of these folks were selected to participate in the campaign, or were asked to participate in the campaign because we thought they had the skills that we were looking for. So it's important when you're building your team to think about people that you want to work with, that you work well with, that you get along with, that you respect, that are respected. I think it's important for if a caller is making a call, that the person receiving the call, if they know this person, they know, hey, this is a good guy, this is a good member of our community, this is a good woman, she's involved, she's active. Well-respected folks, I think, is important, and people who like to talk. This isn't necessarily a job for an introvert. There are roles for an introvert, but a caller wouldn't be one of them. You want someone who is passionate about the co-op, has a great rapport on the phone, easy to talk to on the phone. You want to be, those are all things that you can't teach someone. So I think those are the key criteria. You want the characteristics of a caller, and then you can teach them everything else they need to know. But you want someone who's passionate, that likes to have fun. The more fun you have doing this, the more fun it is. So if you get excited, energetic people involved, they're going to really have even more fun, and the excitement's going to build. And you want them to be people who get together. So you have to think about intermixing your team too, and how do they interact with others. But some people that you might think of, success managers and professors, these folks are automatically in tune with education. And I feel like as a campaign manager, as a caller on our campaign, my job was to educate owners, educate the team. But when I'm talking to an owner, I want to educate them on what's available to them. And then they get to make the decision on whether or not they participate. And having a teacher do that is so easy to them. It's just their natural instinct is to talk through it as in an educational setting. Retirees were really helpful. These are folks who, want to be active. They want to feel involved and part of something, and they have time, have a lot of time, which is fantastic. And then stay at home, kids off in the morning, and then they'd come to the office and do data entry or write our newsletters, and they were really helpful to us. Active owners, so people who are on other committees are a good place to start. But I will caution you that pulling people from another committee just means that's less work getting done on the other committee. So you kind of have to balance, how bad do I really need them versus the priority of what they're working on, and kind of, make adjustments as you can. And maybe they step off one committee temporarily to help with this. Board members were also a good place to start, but they aren't necessarily a good place to start. So not just because someone's a board member doesn't necessarily mean they make a good caller. So you want to apply these same characteristics to the board members to say, hey, is this really a good fit for this board member? And then staff. Clearly, if you have staff, they're already passionate about the co-op. They're already involved. They would be good places to start. And when I was talking with people about participating in the campaign, I thought of it in my mind as an interview. Clearly, I didn't tell them it was an interview, but I know I'm trying to gauge whether this person's going to be a good fit on our team and where they would be a good fit. And to do that, I want them to have as much information as they possibly could get. So we talked through lots of details about the campaign. This meeting probably took 45 minutes to an hour, but we reviewed the campaign goal. We talked all about the interest rates and the buckets. And I wasn't going to talk about that with them, but I kept getting asked questions about that, and so I implemented it into the process. And people want to know that there's a system in place. They want to know that there's a plan and that they're getting involved with something that has, the ability to succeed. And the more detail you can share with them about that plan, the more comfortable they feel. We also talked through the campaign timeline in detail. And my expectations, and not necessarily my expectations, but hey, if you were to be involved, here's what we would need. You're going to have to show up this many times. You're going to have to give this many hours. It's very hard for you to ask for money if you haven't made a loan yourself. So we talked about the fact that we'd like them to make a loan if they were going to be making calls. Now, not all of our volunteers made a loan. There are exceptions, but it's important that you talk through that with them. And then I'll go through the job descriptions of every level, every job description with them, because you might think they want to be a caller, but they might want to do data entry. And so having them be aware of where they could fit in was really important. And then talking through the training schedule, like, hey, so you want to be involved. Are you available these dates? This is when we're going to do this. Or can we make a time for you to get this training in before we start? And then talk through where do they think they fit and where do I think they fit, and try to find a good place for them to be and be successful.
I think one of the things we've heard when we talk about this process you went through, and I really want to ask you is, that's a lot. Like it's a lot you ask of people, and it's a big conversation. And did it turn people off much, or did it motivate them to hear, that there was going to be real expectations of them and they'd be participating in something robust?
Well, that's a good question. We'd probably have to ask the callers or the people that we talked with to get a real sense of it. My guess is that it was motivating for them because they knew. And I feel like even in my personal life, when I know what's expected of me, it's much easier to succeed. It's when there's ambiguity and I'm not sure, and maybe I should show up, or maybe this training's for me, maybe it's not, then people aren't quite sure how to act. But when you spell it out for them, I think they liked it. Now, I will say that there were people I talked to that said, no way, Jose, I do not have time for this. This is not my cup of tea. That's okay. That's what we wanted. We wanted to get that done, get that out of the way now. But that being said, most of the people that we had these in-depth conversations with, even if they didn't participate as a volunteer, they made a loan. So having that base of understanding, I think, probably helped them participate in the way that made sense for them.
Okay.
Okay, so there's some other things to think about, you know, amongst the planning of your campaign, and that's one of the things that you should probably be considering is what kind of kickoff are you going to do, or are you going to do a kickoff event, and who's responsible for that? Running an owner loan campaign is quite time consuming, and I would suggest that you create a subcommittee of some sort if you're going to do a kickoff event. And you charge those folks with the logistics, the tent or the location and the food, and phone and the entertainment and the PowerPoint and the projector, so that alleviates that work from the campaign chair's responsibility. But you're going to have to talk, you're going to have to be involved with that and be connected to that group, but not necessarily have responsibility for it would be my suggestion. And you're going to have to talk through, you know, where you're going to do this, when's it going to happen, and you're going to need to do this, you know, earlier in the process, because you're going to have to include this in your budget. If there's an invitation that's going to need to be sent out, you have to print those out. So you have to be thinking about this kind of along the way, and as you come to decisions on these things, work that into your process and into your timeline. And then team meetings. So once the campaign kicks off, it's critical that people stay involved and educated about where you are. So we have weekly team meetings with our callers, and not just our callers, our closers, our board members, communication team. Everyone was invited. Usually callers came, but everyone was invited. If they wanted to stay up to date on what was happening or hear updates, we welcomed everyone who was involved to come. But we determined a time that worked for everyone from the get-go. So at our very first training session, we said, hey, we're going to have to meet weekly. Let's find a day and a time that works best for everyone so that we can get the most people here at that time. They lasted about 60 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes. We talked through what's changed in the campaign, what processes logistically are we doing differently than we were doing last week. We talked through what's working well. We talked about what wasn't working. We talked about celebrations and rewards, which I think is the funnest part of this, the most fun, I guess I should say. But we gave out awards for, you know, the most loans that week, or the funniest phone call, or just crazy funny things are going to happen during the campaign, and we celebrated them together as a group. And then we usually always had food. Sometimes someone would bring us, you know, a crock pot of soup, or we'd order in sandwiches, but we usually always had food, and then we started making calls after our team meeting. People who were making calls stayed, and everyone else left.
There was some phenomenal team building going on, which I just think you guys communicated so well through these photos, as well as that it never seemed scary or like a drudge. It seemed like a lot of fun, and that wasn't put on, that you really saw fun as one of the key aspects of the success of the campaign. And yeah.
That's really true, and it really was fun. It's energy building, and there's a lot happening, and it really is fun. And so that was easy for us to show people, because we really were having a lot of fun.
But there definitely were times when I think things were challenging. That you know, I think you definitely decided to put that smile on when you guys were, you know, 400,000 short. You know?
Yeah. There are times when it's not so fun, but for the most part, you especially with people, when you're with the callers and when you're with your team, it's really fun.
Excellent. Well, I think you all heard there's so much pre-planning that goes into this, and Katie did a phenomenal job of outlining how much pre-planning, because she did a lot of pre-planning and then found out there was more. And we have a lot of her documents and suggestions, but one thing we do see consistently with some startups is they really underestimate this campaign. It tends to come at a time that you've already been working your butt off for years, and you've worked really hard on securing that lease, and you just want to kind of feel like, oh, and there's not really time for that. We've got to throw ourselves into this with an intense amount of organization and an intense amount of positivity, energy, and fun. So we've got some questions that people have sent throughout the session. If you have a question, please send it at info@fci.coop, and we'll share this with Katie and get her thoughts. And we are going to share Katie's contact information when we're done here. So if you don't get a chance to communicate your question right now, or you're seeing this when it's not live, there is still a way to get a hold of Katie and ask her your additional questions, as well as myself at FCI, Food Co-op Initiative, if you'd like to ask your questions. One came across how Kate, that lawyer, which we might have to tag team, but it sounds like there was some frustration around finding a person who understands how to do this. What was your experience with that?
Well, that is frustrating. And basically what we did was call other co-ops and ask them who they used and what they thought of it. And unfortunately, there aren't a whole lot of options. When we were looking, this was probably, 2 years ago, probably now, a year and a half for sure. We felt like we had two options, and we went with what we thought was our best option at that point. So I think your best bet is to call around, ask people who they use and what their experience was, and then of course, vet the attorney yourself, talk with them, have conversations with them directly.
And I back that up and say we have identified a couple more lawyers who are doing work in this area that seems to be going very well since the time GreenTap did this. But it's a handful of lawyers nationally that have experience specifically in the co-op area and with with the laws involved, with the investment laws involved. So please reach out to other food co-ops and reach out to us. We have a few names, and some of them might be able to work with you in your state and be very effective for you. Next question was, how do we find a Katie? And I think he said, what I mean is, what's your background? How did they know you were the right person for this?
Okay. So my background is nonprofit work. So and I have done some sales work as well. So all of those things combined, I think, positioned me to be successful in this role. So I would look for someone who is comfortable in front of a group, is comfortable being out and involved. I look for someone who's comfortable raising money, asking for money, and although I do not consider an owner loan campaign sales, I want to make that very clear. This is an educational process in my mind. But I think someone who understands that process of how you go from taking information and turning it into a decision, I think is important. And if you can find someone with those elements in their background, you could have a successful leader. And I'm sure there are other people who don't have my experience who are successful too. That just happens to be where I come from.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So we're having a hard time finding people who really want to do this. Is that a bad sign, or do we push through?
I don't know that it's a bad sign. What I would say is that you need to look harder and look at different people. In our co-op, there's a group of people that we always see, we always hear from, that we always talk to. And I dig a little deeper than those people. Maybe it's someone who signed up to be on your newsletter list, or someone who stopped by a booth at the market. In fact, one of our callers borrowed our dishes. We have a set of dishes that we loan out to owners. She was having a party. She said she borrowed them. She came to the office, and when she left, I was like, that's who I need. I need her on my team. So when she brought the dishes back, I was like, hey, let's talk about the owner loan campaign. So I think just being aware of everyone and not limiting yourself maybe to those people who come to the surface and maybe they have said no, or they're not interested. I'm guessing there are people below that level of consciousness in your mind that would be great and would be interested.
Okay. That makes sense. We've got another one. Realistically, how many hours a week can the coordinator expect to put in, and are you willing to talk about compensation?
Yes, I am willing, and I would no problem. So I was a full-time employee with GreenTap as the campaign chair manager. That was in our minds 40 hours a week. I worked probably 60 hours most weeks, sometimes more. And I worked every day. So we had, the only day we didn't make calls was Friday. So Friday usually was a little bit of a lighter day for me, but still I worked because we still had to do updates from the night before. We still had to send out a newsletter. Board still needed a report. So all of those things still had to happen on Friday, although it was a little less. And then we made calls Saturday and we made calls Sundays. So I was at every call shift. So it was intense and it was a lot of work. I, as a Green Tap owner, was paid my salary, which was $20 an hour. And I was paid for 40 hours, which that is perfectly fine. And then the campaign budget allowed for a bonus for the campaign chair as well.
Okay.
So at the end of the campaign, when loans were closed and escrow was broken, the bonus was allocated.
Okay. And that is, for those of you who are curious, there's two common ways to go about compensating a person to coordinate the campaign. And sometimes you'll find that different methods motivate different people. So if you find someone you think is a good candidate, I would talk about two options. I'd be prepared to offer an hourly plus bonus option, and some people would rather just do the bonus structure. Especially if they're not already a paid employee of your organization, that it's a percentage actually of the total amount of loans. And we can talk more in depth about what's pretty standard about that in both those scenarios if you want to reach out to us at Food Co-op Initiative. Okay. Well, that's the questions we got today that came through. Did we miss anything, Katie?
I don't know. I hope not.
Okay. Let's throw your contact information up there. I think there's going to be a lot of people. My experience has been there's a lot of people that want to get a hold of Katie and talk to her in more depth or ask her another question. Here's Katie's information about how to reach her by email and phone. And I'm assuming both those numbers and emails are good for you since you offered those both up?
Yes, that'd be fine. Yep.
Okay. And just so you know, we're not done talking to Katie. That was only 101. So let's throw up the next slide. We'll show you we've got another one coming up with Katie. Owner Capital Campaigns 201, the second level here. And the first one was about getting ready. So Katie, this one's going to be more about actually being in the campaign and the day-to-day of it. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so we've got that scheduled for Friday, September 23rd at 1 p.m. Central Time. That is live, so you can call in, you can join us and send in questions. But of course, these are always available afterwards on our website and on YouTube. If you can't make them live, you can always access them there. And if you have questions, but you know you're not going to be able to make it, email those questions to us at info@fci.coop, and we will incorporate them into the Q&A period when it's live, and you can see it in the video later. All right, well, we want to thank Katie again for her phenomenal work and her willingness to keep really being an amazing mentor to the rest of the Startup Food Co-op community. Thanks so much, Katie.
Oh, you're welcome, and thanks for your patience, everyone. Technical challenges we had.
All right, everyone. Have a great day.